Good morning. Thank you all. You are so responsive, which I appreciate. Thank you again for having me this morning. I'm excited to be here with you again. And just before I really dig into it, I just want to reflect. I think I said this the last time I was here, and will say it probably every time. I really appreciate just how involved your congregation is with the community. Every time I come, I hear some new organization or some new way that you're getting connected and plugged in, which I think is really important for churches, really important for the place that you are, just like physically within our community. And I see you all doing a really great job of doing that. So thank you. I'm going to start a timer because there's a timer here. And I was told not to go too long. Sorry. Again, my name is Julius Buzzard. I am the executive director of an organization across town in Ypsilanti called Growing Hope. Growing Hope is a food systems organization where we work with folks in the community building food sovereignty. What that means at a very basic level for us is we're inviting people into a more just, joyful, and intimate conversation with food and the food system. And we do that in a number of ways. And I'll tell a few stories about that this morning, along with a few stories about myself, but really focused on this idea of kindness that I know that you all have been talking about. So let's dig in. Actually, first, a little bit more about me. Before I was at Growing Hope in another life, I worked at a church. I was a pastor, actually at the same church that Sam was at across town. I worked with another individual, Shona, who is the executive director at Alpha House at that same church as well. So it feels like we had this community of people that have gone out and done all of these things all across our community, and I'm excited to see that we're continuing to do so much good work. So the title of my sermon this morning is Sharing Everything, the Radical Heart of Kindness. And I talked a little bit already about Growing Hope and what we do at Growing Hope. We grow food and we get it to people. We support people with growing their own food. I like to grow and to garden myself. This is unrelated. This is like one of my favorite shirts. It has flowers on it. I also have flowers on my shoes, though I will admit I do not like growing flowers. I don't know why. I think it's way harder than growing fruit or vegetables. I'm not good at it. They always die. They always don't look very good. But I think when people do it well, they look great. And I like flowers, obviously. I have them all over my body. But I think that what I like when I get my hands in the dirt personally and when I'm doing this work with other folks in community is just the continually giving nature. Sorry, I don't need my phone, so I'm just going to put it down. The continually giving nature of Mother Earth. This year at the farm, we grew lots of things. At my own house, we grew, yesterday I just harvested okra, jalapenos, and green peppers, as well as tomatoes. Some of these things I planted intentionally because I wanted them this year, and some just showed up because I planted them in previous years. And all of them, I would be okay if I did not harvest it all in October. I would be okay if my last harvest was in the middle of September and I just let somebody else do all the work and I go to the farmer's market and buy it. But Mother Earth keeps giving. Mother Earth doesn't have I've given too much, this is my quota. She just keeps giving and giving year after year, sustaining us as individuals, as communities, and as people. So we continue this morning and I begin with some of these stories about kindness. I'm going to talk about the kindness that doesn't sort of fit in a Hallmark card or in a video on TikTok. The kind of kindness that disrupts how we do work within the world. And I'm going to ask a rhetorical question, unless this is the type of place that likes to shout out answers, which is also fine. But what does kindness look like to you? For some, it might be the kindness of being around an elder's table, a grandmother or a grandfather, where no one ever goes hungry. It might look like neighbors who share food, who share resources. It might look like taking a casserole over to somebody who just had a child. It might look like quiet prayers. For me, I think kindness really started or showed up in my life through my grandparents. My grandparents really raised me. And there's nobody who in the world who can convince me otherwise. My grandparents are the best people who have ever walked on earth. And just to show you why, they ran a foster care out of their home. They adopted multiple children. They they lived on a trailer on this piece of land that they owned for years so that they could continue pouring into all of these kids. And as they grew, I became one of those kids. And I have, I have to give everything that I have really to them. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. But it just never stopped. They never stopped pouring out. I never saw them saying, I'm too tired. I never saw them saying, we've given enough. We've given too much. We don't have enough to keep being kind. They just continue to give and give and give. And really are my foundation for what it looks like to be kind in the world. And a lot of times it's small moments. Kindness doesn't always look like you see somebody who's selling all their possessions and giving it away. It doesn't look like something even that you can see. It could be a quiet prayer. It could be, like I mentioned before, taking a casserole over to somebody's house. And oftentimes they seem small, but they're seeds of something much larger. They're remnants of a divine economy, an economy that says you are not what you own, you are who you share it with. In Acts 4, as we heard earlier, just a few moments ago, we get a glimpse of what this divine economy looks like when it's actually in practice. In the early church, those who were trembling, hopeful, and uncertain followers built something that was countercultural and even dangerous. They didn't just pray to sing together, but they reorganized their entire economic lives around this concept, around love. They said that what's mine is yours, there will be no needy among us, and we will share everything. This wasn't socialism, this wasn't philanthropy even, and it wasn't charity. This kindness was revolution. Kindness that dethrones empire. Because the kindness of the gospel, the kindness as the gospel imagines it, is not sentimental, but it's structural. It's not just how we feel, but it's how we arrange our lives so that others and everyone can thrive. Now, I want to focus primarily on kindness because I'm so excited that is where you all are at, where we are at as we navigate this world. But I think that it would be unfair to not do justice to just acknowledge what we're up against a little bit. We don't live fully in this world where everybody is giving of themselves, where everybody is sharing all of the time, where everybody has what they need. That's just the reality that we live in. But it's primarily because we live in a world that tells us that there's not enough. We live in systems that reward hoarding and punishes sharing. Systems that teach us to measure profit instead of participation. And so, oftentimes, we, including myself in this, guard what we have. We build fences around gardens. We lock things in banks or in storage units. We lock away this abundance that God has provided our communities with. And that's what empire teaches us to do. It's not a fault of any one of us. It is the water that we're swimming in. It's what we know. It convinces us that scarcity is real, even when the earth is teeming with enough. The earth is growing enough food for everybody in the world to eat. There is no shortage of food. There is no shortage of food. There is no shortage of anything. We can take care of one another when we lean into this sort of kindness. But the empire tells us to confuse generosity with foolishness. The book of Acts, though, reminds us that the resurrection didn't just happen in the tomb, but it happened in the marketplace. It happened when people said, enough of empire's economy, we're building God's economy instead. The same story, the story of kindness as it reorganizes, is what we live out and are invited to live out today. At Growing Hope, some of the ways that we do this and we think about kindness, the first thing that I thought about was our produce cart. And if you haven't seen it, if you haven't been to our space, we have a produce cart, or actually a produce stand. We just rebuilt it last year, that sits at the front edge of our property. So Growing Hope is on Michigan Avenue. It's the busiest street in the city of Ypsilanti. It's a highway that goes through the entire state, actually. And if you come into our parking lot, the first thing that you see, as I said, is our produce cart. It's just really cool. It was built by some students in Detroit. Last winter, they went through a whole project of reimagining, interviewing folks, hearing the needs of the community, and building this thing. And so there's a ramp up to it. It's wide enough for a wheelchair to be able to roll onto it. And there's sort of 5 different areas on it. And the way that we use it is we put produce coolers, just big like egg coolers on it every day throughout the summer and the spring whenever we're growing food, and people can get it at their leisure. So there's no barrier to entry. There's no, we're not checking IDs, we're not checking pay stubs, if somebody doesn't want to talk to us at all, that's fine. Honestly, sometimes that's preferable because we've got a lot of stuff to do too. But there's no barrier for folks. And it's not just a one-way sort of street where we're growing food and giving it away. It really is a place where solidarity is found because we have community members who are growing in their own gardens who are bringing produce. So like most of the produce I harvested yesterday is going to go on the cart because I can't eat it all. My family can't eat it all. We have other farms throughout our entire county who are either they plant extra in intention to bring it in. We have some who, when people are buying produce from them, they have opportunities to give extra, and so they purchase more for people who can't purchase it. And so we just have this abundance of produce that is showing up. Sometimes we know where it's coming from, but there's times where I don't know until it randomly comes up in conversation. And it's a space where I feel like, this is the type of kindness, this is the type of community, this is the type of economy that we want to invest in, that we want to build, because there is enough. And when we share, there's enough for everybody. I said so much stuff that I wrote, and I didn't even read it. So our produce cart is not about charity. It's about dignity. It's about giving to somebody, and it's about belonging with someone. It's just a small act of defiance against an economy that says kindness should be earned. In Acts 4:32-35, it shows us that kindness in the Jesus tradition isn't soft. It's not just about being nice. It's about redistribution and mutual belonging. It's about saying, no one in our community will go hungry while I have food. That's the kindness of the gospel that's radical. Because it tears down the myth that independence is the goal. It insists that interdependence is the truth of creation. We were made to be in community. We were made to complement one another. I don't know if any of you need to hear that, but I do know that I need to hear that. Kindness in the gospel sense is a form of resistance. It's resistance. It resists extraction, loneliness, and despair. There's a theologian, Walter Brueggemann, who calls this the liturgy of abundance in a world of scarcity. We live that liturgy every time we plant in the garden, every time we feed a neighbor, every time we dare to believe that we have, even if it's a little, enough to share. At Growing Hope, we often talk about, as I said earlier, this idea of building a just and joyful food system. We use those words really intentionally. The word just means that everyone gets what they need. And the word joyful means that sharing is not a burden, it's a celebration. We see this sort of celebration every day. I see it at the farmer's market as folks come together. We see it when our teens harvest and fill the produce cart throughout the summer. And we see it when people who've been pushed to the margins find a place at the table again. In Acts 4:32, this is Acts 4:32 coming to life. I think one of the places where I experience this so regularly is there's an event that happens every third Sunday, so today actually, and it's in one of our buildings, but it's not something we're running or organizing. It's called Around the Kitchen Table, followed by a clothing swap. So Around the Kitchen Table is exactly, I think, what it sounds like. It's just people getting around the table and sharing a meal together. There's no expectation of paying anything. It's designed as a potluck, but people come through, you can eat, you can have fellowship together, and there's no cost to it. And so there's just the widest variety of people who come to this event, both in race, in socioeconomic status, and religion, in really even geography, as far as it goes within our county. And I believe this is just a beautiful picture of what church and what this type of community really looks like. And it's not being organized by Growing Hope. It's not being organized by any organization. It is being organized by people who care about other people, who believe that there's enough food for everybody. As people who come around this table who believe that revolution, that change, that community happens around the kitchen table. There's so much power when we gather together and eat food. Food brings us together. Food unites us. And in a way that I don't think other things oftentimes cannot. Because you don't know, I am often at this meal, and I've been enough personally that I know the people and a lot of their stories, but if you were to just sit down, you wouldn't know if somebody, lives in a mansion in Ann Arbor or lives on the street in Ypsilanti. You see, the economics of empires say there's not enough for everyone. But the economics of God says there is enough when we share. And that shift from ownership to stewardship, from hoarding to sharing, that is the radical heart of kindness. When the early church shared everything, it wasn't because they were trying to make a statement. It was because they believed that the resurrection meant life for everyone, not just spiritual life, but material life, food on the table, shelter, care, and belonging. It's no coincidence that Acts tells us there was not a needy person among them. It's not poetry, it's not policy, it's not practice, it's the kingdom come. So what might it look for us in this church, in our communities, to live Acts 4:32 today? It might look like meal trains for people who are sick or had a child. It might like planting a garden, sharing food, inviting someone over for a meal. I really like what I heard, or I can assume from what I heard you all are doing earlier with the encouragement cards. I think that is an act of kindness that can often get overlooked. But I think it looks like trusting that when we share, we don't run out, but we'll multiply. Because every time we choose kindness, real kindness, we loosen the grip of empire, and we make space for God's economy to grow. We say with our actions, there will be no needy person among us. Now, as I think about this type of kindness, I'm going to share one more story. I was on my drive over here and just thinking about what I thought I was going to be sharing with you all this morning, thinking about kindness, thinking about sharing. And I thought about my daughter. So I have a 5-year-old daughter. And I think that kids oftentimes get pegged a little bit wrong in this sort of light. I think oftentimes when you think about children, you think like, they're trying to fend for themselves, and they don't want to share. Which, again, I have a 5-year-old daughter. I can see how we get to that narrative. But as I was thinking about her and thinking about, I pick her up from preschool 4 days a week, and she has so much to share with me. She has all of this art, all of these stories, all of her friends. She's literally sharing everything that she has with me every single day, to the point where she has nothing else to give. And not because she wants or thinks that I need something or thinks that it's going to make my life better even, just because she has inside of her a heart of giving. And that sort of heart of giving, that heart of kindness, of sharing, it is inside of each and every one of us. We were born with it. It is part of us innately. And, I think throughout, as we grow older, it feels like we have to protect that. It feels like it's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to give, because what if you don't get enough back? But I think through these stories, through what we read in Acts, we just learn that when we're living in this way, I think we realize there's no other way to live. My grandparents taught me a lot about kindness, as I mentioned. They taught me that it wasn't just about being nice, but about being needed. It was about showing up with what you had because you knew you were part of something bigger. And that's what we're invited into again today. Not a sentimental kindness, but a soil-deep kindness. Kindness that grows food, kindness that restores dignity, and kindness that reorganizes the world towards abundance. The world doesn't need just more polite people. It needs resurrection people. People that believe that kindness can still topple empires, fill hungry bellies, and remind us we belong to each other. So may we be of one heart and soul. May we hold what we have in common. And may we, through great kindness, make sure that there is not a needy person among us.